where the shooter went.
He's right outside the door.
The shooter is outside the door.
God, he's shot 100 shots. He must have some big
The shooter is outside the door? Okay.
Welcome to Sandy Hook Facts at sandyhookfacts.com. I am your host, C.W. Wade. One analysis that has remained on my to-do list is an analysis of the gunshots heard on the 911 calls up to the last known suicide shot. Essentially, this would be the last minute of the shooting. I began extensive analysis of the audio with my first video, Sandy Hook the Deadliest Minute, which I published in February 2014, just after my first review of the final report. While I've not published an update, I have changed some of my findings, as would be expected with any long-term study of a shooting. I have revisited the audio issue several times during my personal investigation. However, I have not published any findings. One thing that has held me up is a pending FOIA request from Connecticut State Police for unreleased documents related to the Ginsburg audio analysis. The taxpayers paid Ginsburg thousands of dollars for an analysis of the gunshots at Sandy Hook, and the report only includes a partial release of his findings. I FOIA requested all of his documents. For example, one of the things that is missing is Ginsburg produced a CD with only the gunshots. That was not released with the final report, so they've withheld that. They did release timelines, so that was helpful. I also made a request from Newtown Police Department for the pertinent first few minutes of Chapman's video, which has shots you can hear on it, but Newtown denied that request. Now, I don't have the resources to drag the state police into a hearing 3,000 miles away from me, so basically I'm moving on. I don't think I'd have a case versus Newtown because they have a valid objection, but the CSP is basically ignoring me. So I certainly think that the state police owes public release of that information, and so far they've not given it to me. A second hang-up I had in releasing my findings was a mistake I was making that caused me to miss some of the shots. Recently I started over from scratch, completely disregarding my previous work on the subject. Basically, I find the results remarkable. This video is the latest installment of Sandy Hook the Deadliest Minute. I've not released a video as part of that series in quite some time. This video is called Sandy Hook the Deadliest Minute, 911 Shots Fired.
State Police, 911, what's the location of your emergency?
Sandy Hook Elementary School, shots fired.
For this analysis, we are going to study 3 of the calls that were ongoing during the last minute of the shooting. Those calls are Rick Thorn, who was in the hallway gym area, a parent in conference room 9 who is with injured lead teacher Natalie Hammond, and from a teacher in kindergarten room 1. A quick note on Rick Thorn. Rick Thorn has not spoken publicly on this matter, and so to some degree I have to respect his privacy, and I don't look into him a lot. But the fact is he was a part of a very real, major national tragedy, and his call is very important to this study. So, and that said, some hoaxers looking into him have claimed he was a new hire, had worked there about a year, who came to Sandy Hook after retiring from another school. For the record, that is poorly researched misinformation obtained by hoaxers Googling up some other Rick Thorn and deducing, based on a name match, that Rick Thorn must be the Sandy Hook Rick Thorn. Therefore, Rick Thorn must have just recently moved to Sandy Hook because the Rick Thorn they find is not in Sandy Hook. So that is the type of twisted logic that they have. According to information provided to Sandy Hook Facts by Newtown Public Schools as part of a Freedom of Information Act request, I can report that Richard Thorn, aka Rick Thorn's hire date is June 1st, 2004, so at the time of the shooting he had been employed for just under 9 years. And this also matches the time Rick Thorn states in the report. Back to the gunshot analysis. For this analysis, we must set a foundation for what is going on within the Sandy Hook Elementary School during these recordings. Based on ballistics and the location of casings and rounds and magazines, and considering the amount of time at issue, we can determine with absolute certainty what order the shooting occurred under the roof of Sandy Hook Elementary. For in-depth coverage of those findings, you can refer to my blog or to the video Sandy Hook the Deadliest Minute. To summarize, the shooter arrived at the school just prior to 9:30. He was armed with his Bushmaster AR-15 style rifle. It was loaded with a taped tactical magazine, shown here. Each magazine was loaded with 30 rounds each, for a total of 60 rounds immediately available. Upon exiting his vehicle, he ejected a live round onto the ground. The shooter then fired 8 more shots through the front window of Sandy Hook Elementary School. The shooter entered the school through the window and encountered Principal Don Hutchsprung and psychologist Mary Sherlock, followed by lead teacher Natalie Hammond, who were rushing to investigate the noises. The shooter fired 17 shots, killing Hotchsprung and Sherlock and wounding Natalie Hammond. One of the rifle shots injured a teacher in room 1 when she was struck in the foot by shrapnel from one of the rounds. This teacher's call, one of those that we will listen to during this video. During this period of the shooting, the shooter also briefly entered and exited the office. When the shooter was inside the office, wounded Natalie Hammond dragged herself into the conference room 9 and leaned up against the door. With 4 rounds remaining in one half of the tactical magazine, the shooter enters room 10 and fires those 4 rounds, likely killing Victoria Soto. Out of ammunition, he starts to turn the magazine over to reload the weapon and access the 30 remaining rounds in his tactical magazine setup. It is likely that during this early lull in the shooting is when several children escaped and ran down the road. Once the shooter begins firing again, he empties that magazine entirely, firing all 30 rounds, during which time he kills students Jesse Lewis, Dylan Hockley, Allison Wyatt, and Avielle Richmond. He mortally wounds Olivia Engel, and he also kills teacher Ann Murphy. In total, 9 students escape by running out and down towards the firehouse. 1 boy and 1 girl survive by hiding in the bathroom. At this point, the shooter has fired 34 of the 49 rounds fired inside of room 10. The shooter drops the empty double magazine on the floor and loads a new magazine of 30 rounds. He ejects one of those live rounds on the floor. It is sometime around 9:35 when he exits room 10 and heads into room 8. There are 2 rooms adjacent to this shooting, room 12 and room 8. Both rooms are huddling their children into the small bathroom, attempting to find some safety from the shooting. There are 16 children and 2 teachers trapped in this corner. In just over 1 minute, the shooter fires 80 rounds, which includes 2 magazine changes. While advancing on these children, we can tell by the shell casings that when the shooter stops firing, he is only a few feet away. This is the deadliest minute in school shooting history, as 14 children are killed, 2 teachers are killed, 1 child is mortally wounded, and 1 child survives uninjured. There is an often published hoaxer fallacy that no Navy SEAL could replicate the Sandy Hook shooter's accuracy rate. The reality is much different. When the shooter was in room 10, numerous children survived and escaped. The high killing rate occurred when the shooter cornered a bunch of children and engaged them with a sustained rate of semi-automatic gunfire from a very powerful firearm, a firearm so effective that our military has used it for over 50 years. There was nothing impressive about that shooting kill ratio. Little children, under such conditions, would never stand a chance against any determined shooter so armed. And it is at this point that we pick up our analysis of the 911 calls. The time under the roof in Sandy Hook Elementary School is about 9:37 to 9:38. Several callers have called 911. At this exact time, they are reporting that the shooting has stopped.
This is still going on. Do you still hear it?
I can't hear this.
Okay. All right. Just stay in the room. Lock the door. Make sure everything's locked.
Go down where I'm supposed to
If you can you have...
We can tell that the rifle is likely suffering some temporary malfunction, and the shooter has retreated back into the hallway. He ejects 4 rounds onto the floor trying to get the weapon back into operation. He then drops the magazine and loads an entirely new magazine. With 30 rounds in the rifle, at about 9:39 a.m., the shooter re-enters room 10. Ballistics casings prove he fired 15 more rounds with the rifle, and then he fired the final suicide shot with the Glock 10mm. You can hear these final shots concurrently on all 3 911 calls that are the subject of this audio analysis. The calls we're going to be looking at were released to the public as Newtown Call 3, which is Rick Thorn, Connecticut State Police Report, File 14-36-0, which is Conference Room 9, and 14-37-18, which is Room 1. Based on the casings and the location of the rifle, we can tell that these 15 shots likely included the shots that went through the window. He could have been firing in the direction of the police parking their cars near the ball field. I've also speculated that he could have been copying the Columbine shooters. The shooter fired the 15 shots from the southwest corner and discarded his weapon on the floor. After discarding the rifle, he takes his pistol from the thigh holster and attempts to load a round. The shooter appears to be unable to properly seat a round because he ejects 4 live rounds. The shooter then appears to fire 2 rounds with the pistol, one in or near the hallway, and then the final suicide shot just inside the doorway of room 10.
Oh, yeah.
One thing to understand about Ginsburg's analysis is he only analyzed gunshots that he heard or thought he heard on the tape. He didn't have a totality of the evidence. He just had discs, and they said, analyze these. So that's what he had to work with. When we look at it, we have the benefit of the totality of the evidence, the report, the statements, the timelines. So we can do a more thorough job looking at this audio and understand what is going on. And in that regard, we have a huge advantage over Ginsburg's analysis. Ginsburg charted the first of the final shots that were recorded in these 911 calls beginning at 9:39:22. The first pistol shot can be heard at 9:39:59 and is clearly audible in all 3 calls. With that call, you can line up all 3 calls perfectly by lining up the shot that is at the 9:39:59 mark. And once you line up all 3 calls, the audio falls right into place. A few quick research and methodology notes. I am using the audio program Audacity, a free audio program, and you are certainly free and encouraged to check my work. For this study, I went ahead and purchased the Screencast-O-Matic Pro license, so I screenshotted using the Pro version of Screencast-O-Matic. All 3 of these 911 calls were made with a cell phone. We know they were all cell phone calls because they were all recorded by or transferred through the Connecticut State Police. Landlines would have went directly to the Newtown PD. As noted by audio expert Ginsburg, the telephone is designed to be a close talking instrument, and as such the sounds drop off dramatically when the sounds are remote. Clothing, doors, position, and direction all factor into the recording. I've also noted that during the period of sustained fire, the sound appears to decrease or even drop off. I believe that this is because the people begin to cover up and shelter as they wither under the heavy fire. In the interest of time, we are only going to examine the relevant minute or so of each call. So with that, let's begin with the call closest to the shooting. This is right across the hallway from room 10 in the conference room 9. A parent was meeting with Sandy Hook staff. The state police released this file as 14-36-0. That signifies the beginning of the call at 9:36. I begin almost 3 minutes into the call at 9:38:43. So let's listen to that.
State police emergency. Is this the shooting in Newtown?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Do you have
Oh my
anybody with you right now? Do you have any children with you?
I have no children. I have 5 adults, and one's been shot twice.
One's
This is
been
crazy.
shot twice. Where are you?
I'm in the first conference room.
Okay. Are they breathing and talking to you?
She's breathing, but she's barely.
Okay. Do you know
He's
where
right
the shooter went?
He's right outside the door.
The shooter is outside the door.
God, he's shot 100 shots. He must have some big
The
old
shooter
shoulder.
is outside the door? Okay. Where are you in the building, ma'am?
When you come in the door, make a left, room 9.
Okay. Can you see the shooter?
No, I can't. We're on the floor.
All right. I'm going to connect you with Newtown. Stay in the line. They're probably not going to pick up right away. Okay. I'm going to stay on the line with you. Do you understand? Can you put pressure on, ma'am? Ma'am?
I'm here. He's outside the door.
Ma'am,
No.
do you have a description of the shooter?
No, I do not.
You don't. You didn't see the shooter.
No.
You just have a woman that was shot. Can you do you know how to administer first aid? No. Can you put pressure on her wounds
No.
to stop? You can't. What's going on? Talk to me.
He's fucking right outside the door. I don't want to move.
He's outside the
It is interesting to note that for this meeting there are several laptops and iPads on the table, bottled water and such. So this room was obviously in use for an educational meeting at the time.
Okay, just stay with me, okay? What's your name? Ma'am? Ma'am?
The second call we will listen to was released as Newtown Call 3. As a note, Ginsburg analyzed a 10-minute file of Thorn's call, which is likely a compilation of all of Thorn's calls. Thorn was also transferred from the state police to Newtown, so he also spoke with both agencies. The 10-minute file itself was not released as part of the report, nor would the state police release it to me as part of my FOIA request. At the time of this call, Thorn is reporting that the gym teacher is telling him that there are shadows running past the gym. This, along with the fact that the sounds seem to fade in and out, leads me to conclude that Thorn was likely briefly entering and exiting the gym area of the school at this time. I begin Thorn's call at about 9:38:57.
Okay, the gym teacher told me they saw shadows going past the gym.
Just now?
Yes.
All right. Now, are they running on the outside or the inside?
I would say that was the outside. There's still shooting going on, please.
All right, what about injuries at this time?
Excuse me?
What about injuries at this time?
I don't know of any injuries right now.
Okay.
Yeah, we got them. They're coming at me down Grand Point. Come up the driveway on the left side.
Jen, I need you to call the state police. Just...
This is it. There's still going on.
At the exact same time, on the other side of the school, on the north side of the school, the police see a parent running towards them. The police obviously believe he may be involved in the shooting. And in other audio, we hear the police have him proned out. Parent is placed in handcuffs and walked by Captain Rios, as shown on this dash cam. The final call was made from kindergarten room 1 by an injured teacher. The report notes that the bullet holes in her door were made with the door in the open position, and this teacher is struck by shrapnel or a bullet from one of those rounds. This teacher is bleeding. The audio was released with the state police report as 14-37-18. We begin her call at 9:38.
State police emergency.
I'm at Sandy Hook School. There's somebody shooting guns.
Okay, we have someone over there. Do you know if there's any injuries?
I'm bleeding. My foot's bleeding.
You are bleeding?
Yeah.
Okay. We're
I'm in
gonna
a kindergarten room facing the...
Hey, I got one victim here with their foot got shot. Send an ambulance. And we got the police coming. Are you guys all in a room now, or is
We're in
you're in the classroom?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Can you guys stay on the ground there?
Yeah, we can, but my door's not locked.
Okay.
Our room faces the playground.
Is there any way you can lock it?
No, he's out in the hallway.
He's out in the hallway?
Yeah.
Okay. What's your
Or
name?
whoever it is. My name is... Yes.
Okay. How many victims are there?
I don't know.
Okay. How many people are injured in your room?
Me, just myself.
Just you? Okay. And how old are the kids there?
5-year-olds.
5 years old. Okay. Can you still hear the potential shooter out there?
No, I can't, but I hear the siren.
Okay. Help is coming. We got ambulance and police coming towards you, okay? Okay, if we get disconnected, what's a phone number that I can call you at?
Okay, I still hear him shooting. Oh my God. He's still shooting. Whoever it is still shooting.
Okay, do you know what they're shooting at?
No.
All right, shots are still being fired there. Okay, do you hear the siren still?
No.
Okay. Do you have like a layout of the area there?
What do you mean?
Like
when you come into the
just
front door?
compared to where you are and where you see the shooter.
I don't see the shooter. My door is closed. I hear sirens.
Okay. All right.
Okay, as discussed earlier, all three calls can be perfectly aligned, aligning the clearly audible gunshot at 9:39:59, and you can listen to the calls together. Once you do this, a clear shot pattern emerges.
Barely.
Okay, do you know where the shooter went?
And how old are the kids?
All right.
The shooter is outside
Now,
the
are they
door.
running on the outside or the inside?
Shot 100 shots.
I would say that was the outside.
The shooter is outside the
No,
door.
he's
Okay,
running
where are you in the
inside.
building, ma'am?
Okay.
When you come in the door, make a left room 9.
Okay, can you see the shooter?
No, I can't. Mm-hmm.
All right, I'm going to connect you with Newtown. Stay in the line. They're probably not going to pick up right away, okay?
Okay,
I'm going to
shooter.
stay in the line with you. Do you understand?
All right, what about
Can
injuries
you
at
put
this time?
pressure on,
Excuse me?
ma'am?
What about injuries at this time?
I
Ma'am?
don't know of any injuries right now.
Ma'am? Ma'am, do you have a description of the shooter?
Okay, do you know what they're shooting?
You don't. You didn't see the shooter? You just have a woman that was shot. Can you, do you know how to administer first aid? No. Can you put pressure on her wounds?
Okay, do you hear the sirens?
To stop, you can't. What's going on? Talk to me.
Do you have
Jen, I
like
need you to call the state police.
He's outside the door.
do you have like
What
the
building are you
layout
in, and
of
what's
the
the room
area
number?
there?
Still going on.
What do you mean?
He's outside her door right
My analysis consists of 6 files, the full audio of the relevant portion of each of the 3 calls, aligned by the clearly audible shot at 9:39:59. This time in shot is also substantiated by audio expert Ginsberg. I also isolated each of the shots that can be heard in each of the 3 calls, and I stacked those 3 files, and I took all 6 of those files and I put them into one Audacity file. By doing this, I've attempted to replicate what Ginsberg did to create a shots-only audio. So let's listen to the shots-only audio.
All right, what about at this?
Ma'am. One.
For analysis, we will now listen to Thorn's call and Room 9's call simultaneously and the isolated shots.
You at Newtown, stay in the line. They're probably not going to pick up right away, okay? I'm going to stay in the line with you. Do you understand?
All right, what about
Can you
injuries at this
put
time?
pressure on,
Excuse me?
ma'am?
What about injuries at this
Ma'am.
time?
I don't know of any injuries right now.
Okay.
Ma'am, do you have a description of the shooter?
No, I do not.
You don't. You didn't see the shooter? You just have a woman that was shot. Can you do you know how to administer first aid? No. Can you put pressure on her wounds?
No.
To stop, you can't. What's going on? Talk to me.
He's fucking with us.
Jen, I need you to call the state police.
He's outside the door.
Just
What building are you in, and what's the room number?
Still going on.
Room 9. He's outside her door right.
Room 9 was closest to the shots, and the most shots can be clearly heard in that audio file. We will listen to that audio supplemented by the isolated shots from each of the other calls. All the calls are aligned from the shot at 9:39:59, and that naturally aligns up all the other shots, including the first shot that you hear in all 3 at 9:39:22.
But she's barely.
Okay, do you know
He's
where
right
the shooter went?
He's right outside the door.
The shooter is outside the door.
God, he's shot 100 shots. He must have some big
The shooter
artillery.
is outside the door? Okay, where are you in the building, ma'am?
When you come in the door, make a left, room 9.
Okay, can you see the shooter?
No, I can't. We're on the floor.
All right, I'm going to connect you with Newtown. Stay in the line. They're probably not going to pick up right away, okay? I'm going to stay on the line with you. Do you understand?
all right, what
Can you put pressure on, ma'am? Ma'am?
I'm here. He's outside the door.
Ma'am, do you have a description of the shooter?
No, I do not.
You don't. You didn't see the shooter?
No.
You just have a woman that was shot. Can you do you know how to administer first aid? No. Can you put pressure on her wounds?
No.
To stop, you can't. What's going on? Talk to me.
He's fucking right outside the door. I don't want to move.
He's outside the door. What building are you in, and what's the room number?
Room 9.
Room 9. He's outside her door right.
Not
15 shots can be heard. I would say 14 of them are clearly heard. In all 3 calls, the callers announced the resumption of shooting and sort of masked the second shot. So that shot has to be closely listened to hear that shot. I would say that's the most debatable shot in terms of the audio. The other 14 rifle shots are much more clearly heard.
There's still shooting going on, please. There's still shooting going on, please.
While working on this analysis, I learned that the first pistol shot was fired just prior to the suicide shot. Prior to this analysis, because the casing was found in the hallway, I had previously suggested that the first pistol shot was after the shooter killed Miss Hochsprung and Miss Sherlock in the hallway. This is the 9:39:59 shot and the shot that's most clearly audible on all 3 calls, and this was a pistol shot.
Jen, I need you to call the state police. Just...
There's still going on. There's still going on.
I can't help but wonder if the shooter was going back into the hallway where he was going to find his next targets. When he realized it was over, the police were closing in, and he just ran back inside room 10 and shot himself. He died right by the doorway of room 10. The final suicide shot can only be heard on room 9's call.
What building are you in, and what's the room number?
Room 9.
Room 9, he's outside her door right.
Sandy Hook Facts has exclusively determined the order of the shooting. The shooter shot his way into the school, shot 3 people in the hallway, entered room 10, where he killed Miss Soto, Miss Murphy, and several students. He then entered room 8 and kills Miss Davino and Miss Russo and several students. He then re-enters room 10, where he fires the 15 rifle shots and 2 pistol shots that we just analyzed. The ballistic evidence shows that 49 shots were fired inside room 10. There were 49 casings found. Through analysis and math, it can be determined that the final 15 shots were fired after the shooter entered room 10 a second time, after massacring the teachers and children in room 8. The 911 calls clearly support my analysis and findings in regards to the shooting.
But she's barely.
Okay, do you know
He's
where
right
the shooter went?
He's right outside the door.
The shooter's outside the door.
God, he's shot 100 shots. He must have some big
The shooter is outside the door? Okay, where are you in the building, ma'am?
When you come in the door, make a left, room 9.
Okay, can you see the shooter?
No, I can't. We're on the floor.
All right, I'm going to connect you with Newtown. Stay on the line. They're probably not going to pick up right away, okay? I'm going to stay on the line with you. Do you understand?
All right, what
Can you put pressure on, ma'am? Ma'am?
I'm here. He's outside the door.
Ma'am, do you have a description of the shooter?
No, I do not.
You don't. You didn't see the shooter?
No.
You just have a woman that was shot. Do you know how to administer first aid? No. Can you put pressure on her wounds?
No.
To stop? You can't. What's going on? Talk to me.
He's fucking right outside the door. I don't want to move.
He's outside the door. What building are you in, and what's the room number?
Room 9.
Room 9, he's outside her door right.
That will do it for this installment of Sandy Hook, The Deadliest Minute, and I hope you have found this presentation informative and enlightening.